So, Callum, thanks so much for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to
Thank you.
chat to me. So, for anyone who doesn't know Duncan Yeardley, can you give me a quick overview about Sears and Duncan Yeardley and how the brands operate together and your role within it?
Yeah, very, very unique. Don't think I've heard of it too much in agency before, but yeah, Nick, our director of Duncan Yeardley, acquired Sears not too long ago now. We have therefore got kind of a couple of areas like Wokingham and Ascot that are under Sears and Duncan Yeardley respectively. And then you've got kind of Jennets Park, Bracknell and Cranwood, Bracknell, where we're still on a day-to-day up against each other, but it does open up a fantastic opportunity to sort of collaborate. If I'm struggling for something to get it sold, maybe I can sort of, before I lose the fee to another agent, can I get my brothers and sisters involved in the other side of the branch, give it a fresh lease of life, new launch, but also then we can split the fee type of thing. So it's yeah, very unique, but works very well.
Great stuff. And when I was chatting to Oliver, one of the things you mentioned was this value of collaboration being one of your core values. So, how do you find that works? I mean, you talked about brothers and sisters there. Is that the reality on the ground?
Yeah, we do. I mean, a lot of our processes and systems are different. They have to be with different offices, different companies. But yeah, training, award ceremonies, quarterly awards, everything we do is all together. Friday night drinks down the pub, we are together. So we try and create a family as much as possible. Some of the people that work in that side of the business have worked in our side previously, so that makes life a little bit easier. But yeah, there's always going to be the occasional, well, look, this person's done that, this person's done this, but as long as it's handled, quickly in by management, which it always has done, then I'm pleased to say that sort of doesn't happen as often as you'd think. It is really well done to the other person. And I genuinely believe if we lose something, certainly from my guy's perspective, and I know that from the managers at Sears, if they lose something and it's a case of we could lose it to another agent or lose it to our brother and sister I'd rather Sears get it than a Romans or Prospects, for example.
Yeah, understood. So before flexible fees came along and you guys started
Yeah.
to adopt this strategy, what was your approach to fees and, what did you charge?
Yeah, we've been a very strong fee agency. The 2% plus VAT is sort of our standard level that we start at. Our average fee tends to be in and around sort of 1.5 to 1.7. That's risen from sort of 1.5 in the last 3 or 4 years up to sort of 1.7 now. So, yeah, we're a very fee strong business. So flexible fees for us was quite easy to implement because we could start still at a very high level and get the contribution and still get our higher fee. So it was quite seamless for us to introduce it. It wasn't as tricky as I know some of other agents have perhaps found it.
Sure. And you think that's because you were starting with a premium fee culture?
Yeah, if we're starting at 2% now, so our flexible fee implementation is 2%. If they pay the minimum up front, we get 1.7.
Yeah.
I think our average fee is 1.68 now. So if I can get 1.7 and some money up front, the illustrative total is going to be higher than that. So it makes life easier. Or we can get the full amount up front and be at 1.5%, which, as I said, over the last 2 or 3 years, it's sort of been between 1.5 to nearly 1.7. And the likelihood those people move if they pay the full up front is fantastic. I mean, we're actually finding the people that pay the full up front are the ones that are probably slightly trickier anyway. So it makes life a little bit easier, like flats, for example. So it's not as it is quite a good thing that they're then going to stick to the market and stick with us, or we've been paid for it. And these leasehold transactions can take so long to go through.
Exactly, that total buy-in. So what was your sort of honest reaction when Nick and Oliver first spoke to you about the concept of flexible fees?
Full disclosure, I had a little bit of a heads up. My dad's known about it for a little while, Ian White, so he's known about it for a bit of time. So I was kind of asking questions to him in the background before it had come available, not knowing by the should be doing this. So it was, I understood the process. I understood the reasons why. I just had to put it into my own personal pitch, which was probably the bit that gave me a bit of a leg up on others because I'd already done a fair bit of research on the hows and whys it's beneficial to me as an individual.
Well, that's really interesting, actually. I hadn't actually made that connection. Okay, great. What was your sort of biggest concerns at the time?
I think my biggest concerns personally were that the consumer is not used to this. It's a different thing, and different isn't always better, and people can be scared of different. There was obviously the concern of taking money from people. The reputation Duncan Yeardley uphold is always family run, and just takes that one person where you've taken the money from them and or they're putting Google reviews or something like that. So I think my biggest worry was brand reputation. But as I said, it's not held us back at all. It's, if anything, it's been fantastic of people singing about it.
Okay, great. So how's that played out then? Have you had any negativity in terms of pushback or anything like that?
No, we generally have had nothing. Had absolutely nothing. We're not far off 120,000 now taken on upfront fees this year, and we had a relatively slow start from sort of April, May, and a lot of that's been taken in the last 4 or 5 months, which is a credit to the team I've got. But no, we've had very, very little negativity. We've had one person that said, look, we hands up, made a bit of a mistake on something, taking the wrong key as you always do, or occasionally do it in agency. And guys, I've paid you this money up front. You can't even bring the right key, which is fair enough. But outside of that, it's a very easy conversation to smooth over. And we've not had anything at all.
I think it's really important to just identify that, because my experience of this, having run the system for a few years, is that when you do get complaints, and inevitably every estate agency business in the UK will get stuff wrong from time to time, it's not about the flexible fee, it's about the mistake that you've made. And there's an argument that it might exacerbate it, but fundamentally, in the same way that on a no sale, no fee case, when it exchanges, if you haven't delivered a great experience, you're going to have a complaint to deal with. Exactly the same on flexible fees. It's identical. There's no difference whatsoever, other than potentially
Well, I
that
completely
comes a
agree.
bit earlier. Okay, great.
Yeah, I would get clients that would say, come on guys, I'm paying you X amount anyway on no sell, no fee, even if we'd made a mistake. So it happens regardless of the fee format.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. And what about the sort of preparation? So you run a branch. It's not just you who's doing it, and you've got 3 listers who work in the office plus yourself. So how do you make sure that you can justify a higher fee? Because not only are you doing flexible fees, you're also charging a premium fee.
Yeah, charging a higher fee is just purely down to believing in what you're offering, the team you've got behind you, genuinely believing you're better and different than the other agents. Got obviously a fair amount of market research and case studies to prove that, but it just because the belief that a valuer can go and charge a high fee comes from the team that they have behind them and the product they're selling or the service they're selling. If you haven't got that, then you're not going to be able to, you can quote any fee in the world, but you're not going to be able to quote it with the same conviction.
Absolutely. And it is about conviction, isn't it? It's about belief. One of the things I've observed time and time again is that top performing valuers have runs where everything goes well, and then we have runs where everything goes badly. And you will have seen this both probably in your own performance. And one of the things I've tried to understand is why does that happen? Why do we end up in a position where we're constantly getting yeses and then we're constantly getting nos? And it tends to go in those sorts of waves in terms of performance. And the only explanation I can offer is that it is the belief of what is going to happen next. If you've just had the last 5 appointments that you've done and everyone has said yes, then your expectation is the next one's going to say yes and the fee isn't going to be a problem. If the last 4 people have all said no and your fee's too high, then your belief is that the fee's the problem and the next one's going to say no, and you adjust your approach accordingly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a big thing we try and train within our valuers is you have 5 clients in a day, for example. One of them's going to choose you in spite of fee. They're actively repelled by a lower fee, for example. One person's going to be very fee orientated, and you may be able to swing them round, but in reality, probably not. So we're going to lose them. And a person that's very fee driven can be the hardest work anyway. So you're really trying to, the 3 are really actively trying to show that we're value for money is the 3 in the middle, because one will choose us because of our reputation, our fee. They won't want to choose the cheapest one. One, like I said, we're going to lose because of the fee, and that's fine. So the 3, it's not about them being, and we try and get the conversation out of the office of, oh, they're just after fee, they're just after fee. No, we didn't demonstrate we were worth more than the other agent. And if we haven't proven that to you, then, and I say this to a client, we haven't proven that to the person on the sofa, then that's down to us. It's not down to them. There will be people that, annoyingly will sort of actively go, yeah, look, I know you guys are the best, but I'm not paying that fee, and that's fine. That's where we, the guys have a bit of a license to still do a bit of negotiation. But if you start at 2%, you can come down to 1.8, 1.7. You can't come down to 1.8, 1.7 if you start at 1.5, and you can't increase your fee when they go, you're brilliant.
Absolutely right. So I mean, so much great stuff in there in terms of the beliefs that you've got, not least of which on the training which I do, which I know you've attended. One of the core bits, the absolute core bits that we just bang on about and drill so hard, is about the fact that what customers tell us, which is they tell us fee, a lot more than is actually the case. Because if they don't like and trust us, if someone else has done a better job, they often try and save our feelings by blaming it on the fee. And in the home moving trend survey, only 19% of people, which is your 1 in 5, choose the person with the lowest fee. That's it. 1 in 5. No more. Okay, fine. Well, listen,
Yeah.
we've talked about demonstrating the worth. In the build up to the appointment, how do you and your team, what process do you use to differentiate the offering from Duncan Yeardley?
So I think a lot of it starts from vow booking. So when you're booking an evaluation, we always try and encourage the team to get, it's great to know about the property. You really don't. Yes, you want them talking about their property, highlighting things. If they go into their double doors, then you're going to little things like that help. Pets names, any personal info you can get on the vow booking is more important nowadays than actually what the house is, because you can, with all the technology, see it.
Yep.
Certainly in the patch that we work, that's sad in disrespect for everything's bread and butter properties, 2-3 bed terraces. I've walked around them 100 times. I could walk around them blindfolded. So the main thing starts at vow booking. We're then getting as much information as possible to arm the listers with the tools to be able to build that rapport, not just before they've gone through the door, but building those touch points until we come through the door. The pre-vow call is very important as well. A really crucial part of us sort of recapping and setting ourselves sort of aside. Your typical valuer, I think, in our area will call and say, great, appointment at 3:00, fine, fantastic, see you then. Whereas we're going to go, look, I just want to double check my notes. I've got everything 100%. Recapping, it's showing that whoever they spoke to on the phone and booked the vow in listened. It's something that the other agents don't typically do. So again, you're differentiating yourself and not even got through the door yet, and you're already proving why. In terms of prep, there's no secret, your comparables, your three comparables, your buyers list, case studies, similar properties you've sold, area stats. For us, we tell the guys to take as much out as possible, but don't, kill people by paper sort of thing. You take the tools out of your armory when you need them. So, for example, personality types, a certain characteristic of like a yellow, for example, isn't necessarily going to want to be flooded with loads of graphs on Rightmove. A story.
Absolutely.
We did this for Jennifer over the corner. She used to say that, she had a little one and she's now upsized. It's just exactly what you want to do. Whereas obviously more analytical, or reds, for example, don't want the fluff. They just want to be sold straight away. And by getting that from the kind of vow booking and then.
Absolutely. You make a great point, which is just because we've prepped it doesn't mean we use it. We use exactly what is required based on the customer that we're sat in front of. That's it, and we don't go any further. How do you make sure that your valuers get to know the customer a bit before they go through the door?
That's the vow intro call. Firstly, the conversation, the person who's booking the vow, and that could be a valuer, by the way, but the person who's booked the vow it isn't just a form that we tend to fill out and go into detail. I mean, I'm fortunate enough in my office, we've got very experienced people in there. So a lot of people that have been doing it for sort of 3, 4, 5 years. So it's about us a local, so we can go into kind of detail and depth, asking the right questions that you see on a vow form. But so it's not robotic. We try to ask as much about them as we would about their property. That gives us then tools, because when we take out our notes and it's got, called us because Jennifer over the road moved and recommended us. Well, when we're on the vow, we're going to harp about Jennifer, also whatever. We're going to go off those bases. So it's a slam dunk. And they talk to us about the house and they say, I had these lovely radiators put in. It's little things like that seem really mundane and easy, but it really isn't done on a very skillful level by a lot of valuers out there. They just sort of go through the motions is the best way I can describe it.
And as a manager, how do you make sure that gets done? Because obviously what you described there is what you and I know makes the biggest difference. But getting it done every time in a busy office with lots of responsibilities to execute, that tends to be the big challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've got a mixture levels again in the listing team. So you've got myself and Tom that have done it a reasonable amount of time now. Ani, who for a 21-year-old is fantastic, but she's still very early in her listing journey. And then Victoria, who, you've seen obviously with flexi fees in a very short period of time. I was valuing with Victoria 3 to 4 months ago, sat there kind of letting her try and take the lead and watching her, and she won't mind me saying it, kind of crumble and under the pressure. Well, 3 or 4 months later, she's signed 3 properties up, 1.5% no sell, no fee, 2% no sell, no fee, and a full upfront flexi fee. So as a manager, I'm afforded a lot of time by my team being so good that I can go out and actually help people, but also knowing when I'm not the right person. I think if I'm constantly out with people, that's not going to help. They need to go out with their peers, their colleagues. I've obviously mentioned I've got 2 female valuers, so we do send them out with people across the business as well, and not just other valuers, but other senior members of staff. So we've got a bit of a different makeup in Duncan Yeardley. So 2 of my most experienced girls in the team are Mandy and Judy. Quite mind me saying it, but sort of in their twilight of their careers. Have been all sorts, from travel agents to milk ladies throughout, but they're just very life experienced people. They're not something that you'd say 10 years ago, someone would go, oh, that would make a great estate agent, because they're probably as far from red as you can get. But them actually going out, helping build that rapport, because they're people first. And that's why they're such good negotiators. They're people first. And that helps then the listers that need that red tendency to be a little bit kind of cutthroat and to try and, close, but also giving them that personal side. So I think it's not always thinking that the manager is the one that has to go out with them all the time.
100%.
Use your team.
What's the split on the valuations? How much do you do? How much does Tom do? And how much does Marnie and Victoria do?
Yes, Tom does sort of lion's share. So Tom's sort of 35-40%. Marnie's sort of a similar-esque number, maybe slightly less. So if we go 40-35%, and then I tend to take the rest, with Victoria kind of coming in and doing stuff when I can't, or someone's on holiday, or we've got maybe a price valuation, or she touts something. Her bigger incentive is touting. If she goes out and touts something, that she can go and sign it up.
That sounds great. And my experience actually has been that some of the newer valuers have adopted flexible fees quicker than established valuers because of the fact that you haven't had to break down those habits and behaviors. Have you found that in terms of that transition for each one of those three people, that it's been different in terms of getting them to move from an exclusively no sale, no fee model to a flexible fee model?
Yeah. So Victoria, young, fresh into it, no qualms or queries about flexible fees, had no negatives about it, trusted that we were telling her to do it for the right reasons, and went ahead and sold it. Probably the easiest to doing it, because it just was adding something to the pitch. She didn't have these demons behind her going, well, I can't do this. It's new. It's, I've been valuing for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And that was quite key. She was the last one to sort of get involved in it. But that showed me that someone like her, even when you ignore flexi fees, she was getting 2% fee. Her first sign up was a full 2% fee. No sell, no fee, 2%. There's some valuers that haven't got one this year. So it kind of shows that she asked it because she's not had the knockbacks. And that kind of goes back to your question of that up and down, because they have knockbacks. Do they ask 2% then the next time? Or do they say, oh, I can do a deal, come back to me type of things? And Maria's journey was just adding to her pitch and really still refining her as a lister.
Yeah.
Marnie was very associated with Tom. Marnie's big fear or worry was it doesn't make sense. If I can charge them 2%, I'm very fee proud. I want 2% every single time. If I can charge them 2%, why would I get 1.8 include, illustrative fee when you add both sides together? So for Marnie, it was more understanding the numbers and the benefit as to why doing it this way, albeit from the sort of net when you first sign it isn't going to make a difference. It will long term.
Yeah.
Once she got that, she flew, she got it. And then Tom's who's one of the best performers we've got, is the best performer we've got. His was overprotective of the brand. He was so paranoid and worried about taking money from someone up front, not doing a good job. Or they wanted to put it on at too much money, for example, and then requesting the money back. And I said, well, that's the whole point of this. That's not going to happen. They're going to be more inclined to reduce it. So once we got Tom's fear of, which is a lovely thing, it's lovely that I've got people that are so protective of the brand. They put the brand just about Tom, pitching it every single time as an option. By all means, he can recommend which one he would say if he was in their position. But every time it's an option, you pitch it every time. You don't just choose when and where you pitch it. Once that got through, and into Tom's head, you've seen yourself, his interview, he's been fantastic. All three of them had a different thing they needed to kind of mentally get over.
And that's a big challenge for you as a manager, isn't it? Is that, you can't just have a one size fits all approach to try to manage this in. You've really got to think about the individual personalities and their fears, and is the thing which is stopping them having a go and making that transition.
Yeah, it's finding, and a little plug for you here. Your session gave me that. When we came down to see you in London, I couldn't understand how I could do it, and they couldn't. And that's still me being young manager learning myself. But I just couldn't understand. Guys, come on, I'm doing it. I'm leading by example. Where it should be, but actually, I just needed to get them over that mental hurdle, which was different for all of them. Once I sort of had your session and we went into personality types, albeit we didn't confront that directly, that gave me the inspiration to go, okay, this is how we need to do it. And it was very clear once we came back from that session, all the fees we'd had up until that point, i.e. Victoria wasn't actually valuing at this point, it was just Marnie and Tom, were all the minimums. So there was also a psychological of sliding their finger up and actually asking for more or showing them. So yeah, there was a few system and process things that we kind of got from your day, but a lot of it was just mindset and mentality that
Yeah.
changed. And when you start seeing the wins come in, it became easier and easier for Tom and Marnie to then.
Such an important point, isn't it? Is that the reality is that if you present it every time to the customer and you give them the choice, they will more often than not pick one of the options, which involves a contribution towards their marketing, some form of flexible fee, because the deal is so heavily loaded to make that look a brilliant deal. That's why
Yeah,
we get high adoption rates. And therefore, if you've got a valuer who is getting next to nothing, guarantee they're not pitching it every time. Guarantee, 100%. And so the question is why? Why aren't they pitching it every time? And the bit, I guess, I remember this from being early on in my managerial career, and I'm not suggesting this is the case for you, but certainly was the case for me as a younger manager, is that I assumed everyone was like me. I assumed that the world basically was, the people who worked around me had the same thoughts, feelings, values, motivation, fears, frustrations as I did. And so I treated them accordingly. And of course, everyone comes at the world from a slightly different point of view, and our job, whether as a lister or as a manager, is broadly the same thing, which is to understand how they see the world. If there's one skill which I would say I'd encourage anyone out there to think about developing, is to always, always, always ask themselves, what does the other person want? And if you can answer that question in any interaction that you have in life about what does the other person want, then suddenly gaining cooperation in partnerships just becomes so much easier. And spending time trying to understand what the other person wants and why they want it is just the best investment that you can make in terms of relationship building. And it doesn't mean you have to give them what they want, but more often than not, you can find somewhere where your objectives and their objectives overlap, and you create a win-win partnership. So yeah,
yeah. I think as a manager, as a manager, you're wanting them to succeed. So
of course you are.
it's just making sure that it's coming across from that point of view, not grilling them for not doing it, especially when it's something new. But actually, a lot of the things that we've had with fees, for example, trying to up people's fees, it's the same thing. It's not coming at it with a whip necessarily. We found carrot or stick. Sorry, a carrot. The carrot's been brilliant. But we've been starting to do, and this is where the collaboration comes in. We've been doing like cross brainstorming ideas, and a lot of the common theme in the early days was for the flexible fees. Well, how can I charge this? How can I ask for this fee and some money up front when the other agents are doing Y? One of the big sort of revelations was, well, take flexi fees aside for one point. What's the difference? Because all that's happening now is you're actually offering a more competitive deal because you've got the tools to do so. Beforehand, you should be offering 2% versus, let's say, some of the agents that do it as low as 1%. So, and then you could kind of see like a little bit of a light bulb. Like, oh yeah, well actually flexi fees isn't, you're making the decision before you've even got in their living room. And if you're making the decision before you've got the living room, selling it, but it's been a really eye-opening thing. I think it's shown how different people, different branches have taken it in their stride, and some that still need support, and that was always going to be the case. You can't have, every single branch flying at it, but utilizing each other. And the big thing as I said earlier, knowing when you're not the person that needs to go on the vow every single time. Just because I was smashing it in the early days, actually it can put more pressure as a manager going out with them. I found there was a lot of benefit in doing, role play over the table, over the screen if needed. But actually go out with someone else, go out with one of the negotiators and just practice so it's a less pressured environment, and then come back to me and how did it go? And actually dissecting with them after the vow. And it's a bit of both. You still do need to go out with them on evaluations, for example, and then sitting them in the meeting room afterwards again. How did that go? How did the pitch go? Anything you saw that I didn't see? Because it can always be a little bit of a pressured environment if the manager or the director is on there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if I was going to give people any advice on observations, it would be to do them frequently when things are going well as when things aren't. I think one of the dangers of using observation as a tool to improve performance, and by the way, I'm a massive believer that observations improve performance because it cuts straight to the nub of the issue. But the problem is that we tend to use them when things aren't going well. And when things are going great, we're saying, you just crack on and do what you're doing. The problem is that then that becomes associated with observation being something that is done to me when my boss thinks I'm not doing a good job. And so it's just about the consistency of like every Thursday afternoon is Callum and Victoria afternoon, and whatever's in the diary, I come out with you on a Thursday. Come rain, come shine. It's a great opportunity to catch you doing things right, and for me to learn, and and for me to offer some suggestions as well. And I think if you can, I'm not saying it needs to be weekly, by the way, but the more that we can find that as just a routine exercise that we do to support our team, because we care enough to be able to invest that time and share that time together. I think if we can get observations into that sort of frequency and that sort of intent, it makes a massive difference to then how they're perceiving them, which is not shit, I'm doing a terrible job. And now, Callum's coming out with me, but something slightly different. And it's actually just an activity of support. And so certainly as a branch manager in my later years as a BM, I would always try and have a regular slot that I would go out with my lister on, come rain or come shine.
Yeah, that's something that we do, and we've also just not been making it so lister specific. We've also been starting to do it just even with the negotiators, because it's good to spend time with them. They see as well that okay, you're always out with the listers, you're always out with them touting, you're always out, and that's obviously is a very important valuations as the lifeblood of the business. Yeah. But it's also good to check in with them, spend some time on them one-on-one outside of kind of that normal one-to-one meeting room type thing where it's a bit more formal. The other aspect that I think FlexiV's helped us is actually the wider. I think some branches that I've spoken to, and this is not just ours, there's other agents that I know of that have implemented it or started to, it's just the listers and the managers that know about it. And they've actually neglected a core part of the, so we've had individual FlexiFee training and they, it's not feasible for us to send everyone over to Woking all the time on a valuers brainstorm session. But when we come back, we discuss the points that were raised. We have sort of mini meetings with the negotiators about flexible fees. And we've got quite a diverse team in the sense that all of my negotiators have the ability to go and list a house. So they need to know about flexible fees. So that's probably inadvertently made us do it. But it means that when they get a conversation and someone's calling up asking about a fee, you typically think, oh God, it's a low fee. It's a terrible fee. When actually they can have the conversation. Well, look, we have a committed seller product that may enable you to get the cheapest fee for us. Yeah. Let me book someone out to come and talk to you about it. So them knowing about it is just important that everyone in the team knows about it, not just focusing on the listers as well.
That's such a really good point. And I love the fact you've got a multi-skilled team as well. That's a brilliant position to be in, where you've got that flexibility to build people's careers, to give them variety to their job, and also to get them, as you pointed out earlier on, to go and see the stuff that they've prospected themselves. And we know that if we go and see stuff that we've booked ourselves, we're much more likely to convert it. That's a sort of well-established fact. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the appointment itself, if that's okay, in the time we've got left. So how do you go about positioning and showing flexible fees to the customer? How do you communicate what can sometimes be a bit of an unfamiliar and an abstract product?
Yeah, so for us, I've tried to get away from certain wording and terminology. So for example, no sell, no fee was used. No sell, no fee. This is the percentage on our typical. So I've been changing that to the traditional model where you pay everything at the end. And obviously if they pay the full amount up front, then that's kind of negates it. But most people are contributing a certain amount. And I didn't want the no sell, no fee to be stuck in their minds. This is no sell, no fee. And then this is, they're paying they're contributing. So for me, it's about changing the wording. So instead of upfront, it's contribution and they get a reward rather than a discount. We're rewarding them by discounting their fee type of thing. So we've been trying to change the terminology.
Really nice. Really, really nice.
So yeah, traditional model, committed seller package, do you mind me asking, based on everything you've said, I believe that you'd probably fall under the committed seller. I'm going to tell you about both of them anyway. But where do you think you kind of align? Well, yeah, Callum, we need to, they're then selling to me and telling me, well, look, our traditional package is 2% plus VAT. That's all paid at the end of the process. There are some minor disbursements at the start. Or we've got our committed seller package where I can effectively, with a contribution towards your marketing, reward you with a discounted fee. Let me grab my tablet and let me show you how it works. And then actually giving them the tablet, putting it in, letting them have a play around with it. That's kind of how I felt best. When I've then left it with people where they're kind of, look, usually I just need to speak to the wife or just need to have a think about finances and where we go. I've always said, look, from my side of things, I've always found it's best to either tell me what you're comfortable contributing, and I'll tell you how much you're saving, or tell me what you want to get my fee to, and I'll tell you how much you have to contribute. And they're the two methods I've found. So some client might come to me and say, look, I want to get my fee to 9,000, including that. Okay, to do that, sir, you've got to pay me $4,500, including that, to get it down into the process, £1,500, including VAT. Okay, fine. This is what it is. This is what you're saving. And then with the saving element, when I'm pitching, obviously you have that saving bit at the bottom. I always try and liken the saving bit to something in the process. So I'm only talking to them now about committed seller because my question before, no, I wouldn't be interested in contributing. Okay, fine, done. Let's focus on this. I may go back to that if they go, look, that's too high. Well, that's why I offer this model, because this enables you to, and it may be another one, but the saving element. So let's say that's 1,500. They've saved off my normal fee. Well, look, that's your solicitors paid for, Mr. Smith. You know, that's your solicitors paid for in the process, your removals. That's the new sofa that the missus wants in the new house, or something like that. You know, just trying to make it so that that's just not a number. It's actual something they can tangible. You know, that saved you. That's your solicitor. That's your sofa. That's your new kitchen, or part of whatever it might be.
So some really, really good stuff in there. I have to say, I love what you've done with it in terms of the reward. I love the rewarding terminology. I think that's brilliant. And, you know, the committed seller package, again, is great. There's some, really good. I'm definitely going to listen back to some of that, because I'm going to steal it, Callum, because there's some really, really good material in there. So well done. Okay, fab. And then we obviously don't always secure the instruction on the day, although I'm sure we're seeking to, with the buyers that you were talking about, you were preparing, and the case studies, and giving them all the reasons to choose you on the day. What sort of follow-up processes do you have in place to try and make sure that if you don't get it today, that you're getting it after the instruction?
So follow-up process probably hasn't massively changed. I probably have less I sign up there and then on the appointment, which is probably the only slight negative, and that's mostly because they need to check whether they want to go for the contribution method, the flexible committed fee package, or they want to go with our traditional model. So that's probably the most difference I've had. You know, I'm not then walking away with a contract on as many, but then I get it, that's that message. So when I finish my valuation, depending on which model they were interested in, and this is prior to us having those links, I would be sending the link calculator we've now got, but I would be just screenshotting it, and I would be screenshotting it normally beginning, middle, and end. Or I'd be saying, look, okay, you're considering the contribution method. What price points do you want to know where the calculator's at? So they might say 1,000, 1,750 minimum, for example. So I would send those screenshots on WhatsApp. Normal follow-up process. Nothing's changed from my no sell, no fee, other than adding that and into it, sending the valuation letter on the day or the day after where possible, and then following up in the morning, really. That's typically what's happened. And then, it's really them deciding. I've started very recently, which has proved some success, where we've obviously got, I think most agents will have like some additionals, for example, like AML and ID, EPC, a social media package. So I've had some clients that have said, look, I'm happy to pay the minimum. And I've said, look, you know, that's great. Just out of interest, if you did, because you've got to pay this anyway, if you got to £1,000 in VAT, I could, if you get to £1,000 including VAT, I can throw one of the three packages in for you. So I've started to sort of not challenge in the right way, and if it's the right person, but if someone's Callum open to doing the minimum, it's the minimum plus these payments anyway. Do you think you could get to 1,000? Because if you get to 1,000, you're getting the savings still, plus I'll throw one of the three packages in. So yes, you're contributing more, but you are getting a bigger saving. And that's worked quite well recently.
Brilliant. And sorry for the interruption there, by the way.
That's all right.
Okay. So in wrapping up then, if you were going to give any advice to any branch managers who are suddenly looking at an adoption into flexible fees, what would be the bits that you would advise them to think really carefully about?
Knowing your team, knowing their strengths, weaknesses, and not always doing the training together. Because I think when you do it on a one-on-one basis, they actually tell you what their issue is, or what I found is their issue, as opposed to when it's in a group setting, one person will be brave enough to raise something. Oh yeah, I had that problem. So I think it's that they're the bits I've found, you know, having individual moments with the team and tick and what doesn't, and finding that weak spot, finding the weak spot in the pitch, finding the barrier to why they aren't pitching it with conviction. Conviction is what it all comes down to. Belief and conviction. If you believe in the product, believe that we're never going to take money from someone and mess them around and provide a poor service, which generally my team, you can hand on heart ask them, they don't believe or service. Well, then the barriers that if we do this and don't do a good job, all go.
Such a great point. And ultimately, all we need from people is for them to present it to the consumer. And if we do, the consumer will do the hard work for us, no doubt about it. And have you found the shareable links have now been helpful in terms of getting the customers to engage with it?
Yeah, I think it's an easier process than screenshotting it 3 or 4 times. They can mess around with it themselves. You can see when they've clicked on it, when they've opened it. You can send a new one over if you need to. They can have a play around with it. You can send something back if you need to make a slight alteration, maybe with a bit of a discount, for example. And actually, one other thing, sorry, just crossed my mind is giving your teams the autonomy on flexi fees as well. And what I mean by that is, on a no sell, no fee, most agencies aren't, this is what we charge, this is it, you have no autonomy. You normally have sort of margins at the bottom or baselines at the bottom you can't go below without maybe doing it once or twice a month. They also should have the same, or we found they should also have the same on flexible fees. For example, if we can get, and I said we're trying to get up to that 1.7 mark now, if I can get my listers to sign something up at 1.6%, you know, our average house price is around 400 grand. Just quickly do the maths, but that's about, our business plan figure tends to be about an average fee of 6 grand. So if they can get the 1.6, which gives us our 6 grand plus the minimum up front, which isn't doable on the scale, as a team and you should be happy with that.
Yeah.
So yes, we want them to go for more. Yes, I don't want it to be a consistent thing, but basically getting the team and certainly the values to know about the numbers, know what a good fee is and what a bad fee is, knowing when to walk away as well and say, I can't do that. But giving them autonomy and teaching them about that. We call it wheeling and dealing type of things, doing stuff away from the calculator, but it's worked well. And even if you've got to take a really, really good house on, high value, so not our standard stock, but let's say 700,000-800,000, and even if it's as low as 1.25, but you're getting something contributed at those values, for us, our contribution minimum goes up the higher the value. But if you're getting something like that that's going to generate a property and getting a flexible fee, so we've got that commitment. Tradables, if you're going to lose something on the fee and go below your 1.5 is our boundary, can I get a flexi fee out of it, which gives them more committed? Can I get the board? Can we do stuff? And I think just giving them that autonomy. And if it goes wrong, then pulling them up and just saying, look, you know, great, fine, you've done that, but look, on this one, I wouldn't have done that.
Okay, that's been incredibly interesting, and I've got some brilliant tips from you. So I'm genuinely grateful for your insights and that sort of practical, you know, at the coalface work that you've been doing. And it was interesting. I was doing a session with the Conhorse valuers, and there was a guy who'd been running it for 5-6 months, and he came to present to the second group of Conhorse valuers, and he came up with a brilliant pitch again. So it's the whole point about this community really is that what I want to try and create an exchange of ideas about how we're doing it. So I'm really excited to share that with the rest of the community, and want to say a massive well done to you and your team for the way that you've adopted it, and you're absolutely crushing it at the moment. So congratulations and well done.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Right.